Scripture reading is from Psalm 19, 1 and 2, and Job 12, 7 through 10. The heavens herald your glory, O God, and the skies display your handiwork. Day after day they tell their story, and night after night they reveal the depth of their understanding. But turn to the animals and let them teach you. The birds of the air will tell you the truth. Listen to the plants of the earth and learn from them. Let the fish of the sea become your teachers. Who among all these does not know that the hand of Yahweh has done this? In God's hand is the soul of every living thing. In God's hand is the breath of all humankind.
Would you pray with me? Ground of our being. As we share this time together, maybe we be aware of the beating in our hearts, the breath in our lungs, the earth that sustains us, and the care of one another. May we open our minds and our hearts to your Spirit. And may the words of my mouth and the meditations of each of our hearts be filled with your wisdom and your insight. Amen. So I don't believe that spirituality is static. It is not a flat, constant, non-changing sort of thing. Our spirituality must be dynamic, a dynamic process where we learn and change and grow as we grow through our lives and as the world around us changes and learns new things. We should be informed by all of that. We should be informed by science and psychology. The world is not flat anymore. It may be in the Bible, but I'm sorry. We need to allow ourselves to understand that we are not the center of the universe. And our science informs that. Our psychology informs how we relate to one another. It informs that, us LGBT folks, we're really pretty normal like everybody else. We need to be informed by sociology and by archaeology and the things that we learn from the past. All of these things aren't just things to be studied, but they get absorbed and they change us and they help us to grow in our understanding of ourselves and our understanding of God. And I'm sure many other things that I didn't even name. I personally do my best to keep learning and growing. Just because I got my Master's of Divinity didn't mean I was done studying about God and learning about God. I have to keep up with everything, and I have to keep reading new authors and new ideas, and it gives me a broader and broader understanding of the divine and a deeper understanding of myself. So I typically have 3 books going all at the same time. I have the one for the Women's Spirituality Group, I have another spiritual book going, and then I have brain candy, because everybody needs a break. And I can't read those theological books while I'm biking on my stationary bike. Interestingly enough, in those spiritual books, over the last, 5 to 10 years, maybe even longer, over and over and over again, these spiritual writers have said there is an awakening consciousness in this world. There is an emerging understanding and consciousness led by science and quantum physics, of the fact that we are one. We are all one. Some people say we're all made of stardust. We all have a spark of the divine in us. However you want to say it, we're all connected. And you've heard me say that 1,000 times. Today, a day short of celebrating Mother's Day, I want to lift up an awareness of Mother Earth and our oneness with Mother Earth, because we tend to forget. Before I go there, let me do a little bit of backstory to her. Not a history, but a herstory of Mother Earth. Thank you, Mike. So I pretty much gave you the story in the kids' story, if you were paying attention. You know, in ancient civilizations, there was almost always a Mother Earth and a Father Sky, or a Mother Goddess, or Gaia, however you wanted to name them, and they complemented each other. They worked together. They were not hierarchical. There wasn't one over the other, but you know, Mother Earth provided the body, the flesh, the ground, the animals, the plants, the rocks, the trees, us, everything. And Father Sky provided the air that we breathe, and the sun, and the rain to nourish the plants and to help all things to grow. They worked together. And in those ancient civilizations where both were honored and worshipped, men and women were pretty much equal. The societies were egalitarian societies. They were peaceful societies. And they lived in harmony with nature, revering nature and respecting nature and understanding that there was a connection. They relied on nature for their very lives. So, as time went along, unfortunately, in the area of the Mediterranean, there were invaders who came down from the north, and they brought their warrior god, who was very much like the sky god. And as you know, in ancient times, when battles were fought and people went to war with each other, whoever won got to bring their god along, or goddess along, and they got to take over. So when the people from the north went to battle with the people of the Mediterranean area, they won. Their technology was a little more advanced. And so they went, you know, hey, our warrior god, our kind of sky god, is really the only god, top god. And so over the course of a couple of centuries, Mother Earth, or Mother Goddess, was demoted and demoted and demoted until she finally disappeared. And things became out of balance. As she disappeared, a different sort of philosophy emerged. One that's pretty much said that the earth was ours to dominate, and that women were kind of second-class citizens. And it was aided by the philosophers in the couple hundred years before Jesus. So, you know, Plato and Aristotle and Socrates, all those people, what they did, they elevated the spirit and they denigrated the body. They elevated reason and they denigrated emotion. They elevated the male and denigrated the female. In fact, Plato said that the incarnate soul was male. A couple of them even said that women didn't have souls at all. So all of that was happening at the same time. And things got severely out of balance. Coming to now, a couple thousand years later, if you look around at our society and our world, our earth, we're still out of balance. Did anybody read the UN report or the articles about the UN report last week? That there were 450 researchers who put forth a huge paper that was accepted by all 109 countries in the UN. It pretty much said there are about a million plants and animals that are on the verge of extinction because of what we've done to destroy or harm oil spills, their habitats. So overfishing, changing the climate by our use of fossil fuels, pollution, water, air, earth pollution, all of it. There are a million. I'm not even sure I knew there were a million animals and plants out there, but there are a million that are facing extinction. That's crazy. But you know, Earth was to be used and dominated. It was that mentality. You know, look at what we've done to women who have been subjugated all over the world. We still have female genital mutilation. Sex trafficking is huge when it comes to the millions of young women who have been taken as sex slaves. It continues, just the way women are treated around the world. You can see it over and over and over again in our news, in our society. We're out of balance. So can you see Father Sky in our Old and New Testament and in our religion? Name one way you can see that. Or a couple of ways you can see that. Do you still see Father Sky? I still see Father Sky. Okay. And now in our religion and in our, how do we point to that all the time? I mean, who grew up in Sunday school learning that God was the guy in the sky? Right? Anybody been to the Sistine Chapel? God is a guy in the sky. The beginning of the Lord's Prayer, what does it say? Who? And where's heaven? Right. At least that's where it was pictured then. Over and over and over again. The part of the psalm that you read, Teresa. What do the words say? She's still got it. Talked about, you know, the sky being the glory of God's handiwork and something else, which she's going to tell me now.
Day after day, they tell their story, and they deal with that for their understanding.
Yes. So they reveal their glory, their depth of their understanding. What else? It said, the skies display your handiwork. Oh, if you start to watch, you see Father Sky echoed in our scriptures and in our churches. You know, churches were built, you know, with huge ceilings because you were supposed to look up. You weren't supposed to be seeing what was down here because it wasn't great. You were supposed to, you know, the poor people even were meant to go into the cathedrals and not see the misery of their situation anymore. Their eyes were to lift to the stained glass windows and to the murals on the ceilings and to think of God and the heavens and God out there looking at the earth. You know, many of you are on Facebook, and the cover picture I put on our Sacred Journeys page was a picture of the earth from outer space. Right? Whose eye view was that supposed to be? It was God's eye view. Look, this is what God can see. And where's Mother Earth? If we're supposed to keep looking up for the sacred, if Father Sky, who's been equated with reason, is up there, we forget to look around and to see God down here. There are pieces of Mother Earth that we can hear in our scriptures, or Mother Goddess, if you want to put it that way. In the creation story, it says men and women were created in our image. There's a plural in there. Proverbs 8 is wisdom or Hokmah talking, which was the feminine voice, and it says that she was the one who was the divine architect standing next to God at creation. Even the pieces that you read from Job, which we talked about learning from the animals and the plants and the trees and the birds and the fish. You know, there's pieces of that importance of creation still in our scripture But in that case, that's been attributed now to Father Sky. Father Sky just got it all. Sally McFaig is a theologian who has kind of said, you know, we start to talk about nature and people start thinking, pagan! People who worship goddesses! Another reason that we don't look at that stuff anymore, because it's been given those labels and those bad, you know, negative connotations, which shouldn't be negative in the first place. But isn't nature the embodiment of God? Isn't everything the embodiment of the divine, the incarnation of the divine? Richard Rohr says that God is visible everywhere, in everything. So, bless you. To start to have something to do, some new way to look at this. Sally McFaig says we need to look at to look at the way we see things, and we can see things one of two ways. We can see it with an arrogant eye or with a loving eye. And so, if we see things with an arrogant eye, what do you think that means? What do you think that looks like? Judgmental, we're better than. So certainly there was a hierarchy of God, angels, men, women, animals for a long time. Pastors than people. Yeah, that was wrong too. So yes. So an arrogant eye says, yeah, I'm much better than you are. When it's looking at nature, what does the arrogant eye see? Something to be used, absolutely. It's greed and it's gain. What can I get from the oil? What can I get from the trees? What can I get from the oceans? What can I use? An arrogant eye is manipulative and it's controlling. And it doesn't recognize that Sally has different needs than I do. That the trees have different needs than I do. It's all because my needs are much better than everybody else's. And so that's an arrogant eye. So we're reading Boundless Compassion by Joyce Rupp in our women's group. And one of the stories she tells is a great example of an arrogant eye. So Joyce Rupp says she's on retreat one summer, and she's at this spiritual center that has just put in a pond. And there are all kinds of frogs in the pond, and she's like, she went to sleep that night, and all the frogs were croaking, and they kind of lulled her to sleep, and it was just beautiful. Well, the next morning she got up, and one of the participants came up to her and she said, "What was that awful noise outside all night?" And Joyce explained to her about the pond and the frogs, and the woman said, "Well, can't you get it to stop? Can't you just kill them?" Arrogant eye. So the opposite of that is a loving eye. How do we look at things with a loving eye then? You're equal. Everything belongs. Everything has a place. Everything has intrinsic value and worth. See, I even got the ding bell on that one. Got it right! A loving eye can say, Sharon has different needs than I do, and that's okay. Connor's a different person than I am. He likes different things, and that's okay. It understands that our earth needs to be cared for, not just used. It's not about greed and acquisition. It's actually seeing and honoring something else, not for what it needs to be. Not even to say, I find God on the golf course. And, we're using the nature just to find God. No, it's just to accept it as it is. See, ding, I got the bell again. I don't know who's doing that, but God bless him. So here's a story. Joyce Rupp was just right on this last year. Here's another story from her about the loving eye, okay? So there was a giant, fierce Irishman who was in prison for his violence, okay? And as a job in prison, he worked in the slaughterhouse shooting the cows. And he didn't have a problem stunning and shooting the cows until one day, a particular cow walked in and came into the stainless steel funnel that they have where they shoot the cows. And this cow walked in really, really slowly and looked her executioner in the eye and did not break that gaze. And he couldn't lift his gun to shoot her. He couldn't break the eye contact with her. And as they held this eye contact, something even more shocking to him happened. She started to cry. A tear rolled down her left eye. And then tears rolled out of her right eye, and there was water running down her face. And he said he couldn't take it. He just couldn't take it anymore. He fell on his knees, and he vowed to never kill anything again. Amen. The loving eye, when you see, and with compassion and with love, the strength of that, the oneness in that we miss on a daily basis. Okay, so here's my crazy story of the week. Like when it rains really hard, where do all the worms go? They come up. Have you ever walked on the streets after a rain? And those poor worms are all over everywhere. I'm walking the dog sometime last week after it had been raining for a couple of days, and I'm looking at the ground, A, because I don't want them on my shoes, but B, because I'm devastated, because most of these worms are dried up. And I think about what happened, and they're all heading back into the grass. You see the line that they're trying to get back where they can live, but most of them are dried up, and then I see one that's moving. And I stop and I pick it up and I toss it back in the grass. And then I can't stop whenever I see one that's moving. And so my whole walk, I'm picking up these worms and I'm tossing them back in the grass. Because my heart goes out to them. I know I don't, but there's like a oneness with these poor worms who are starting to dry up, who are trying to get back to the grass so they can live. The loving eye to look at the world differently. Maybe it's simplistic for me to say, I think if we hadn't gotten rid of Mother Earth a long, long time ago, that maybe we'd have a little more equality and maybe be looking around down here and having some more respect and reverence for the planet that we're on. But I'm not sure that is simplistic. I think we need all of the pieces to be whole. We can't take one over the other or elevate one over the other. If we're going to keep Father Sky, which clearly we have, then we need to reinstate Mother Earth. We can't just have reason and intellect without emotion and compassion and love. We can't just have male without female, or light without dark, or cities without nature. We can't continue our dualistic thinking. And so I encourage you to absorb what you can for that, even if you save an earthworm along the way. If that's what you got out of the day, then we saved one. but to look around, to see our oneness with all creation, and to treat it with respect and reverence with a loving eye, not an arrogant eye, that we might love our Mother Earth back into health. Amen.